Hello and welcome to the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Nina Adio, a social media marketing expert specific to the wedding industry. On this show, I discuss tips to help you DIY your social media, as well as getting the confidence and income to outsource it. Thank you for allowing this episode to come through on your Bluetooth, your car radio, wherever it may be you're listening from today. Now, let's take your wedding business to the next level. All right, guys, we have an exciting interview for today's episode, but I want to do a brief introduction to Tanya Pushkine from the Vow Whisperer and why she's going to be such an asset for all of us listening here at the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast. Tanya, through her business, the Vow Whisperer, has taken something that some may view as a challenge, right? I'm just the officiant. It's only 30 minutes. It's only the beginning of the wedding. People don't value us, and people have a lot of roadblocks that they will talk about when talking about marketing their officiating business. But Tanya has turned it into an event. She has turned vows and the ceremony into a production. Kind of makes sense when you hear about her experience in acting and with Juilliard. But she really has turned not only what is her own passion into something, but she's turned it into something where others are now passionate about the vows, about the ceremony. And she's going to get into that entire process and how she started and how she did it. I really encourage you guys, regardless of the type of wedding professional you are, to head on over right now to the vowwhisperer.com so you can see what she has turned a ceremony into. It is a production, it is an experience, it is something where you will seek someone out worldwide who is renowned at doing this to do your wedding. She really has made it a fantastic thing, and you're going to really enjoy hearing everything directly from Tanya in this interview. So I'm going to stop talking so we can get right to it. If you guys are on social media or in the wedding world online, then you have heard of the Vow Whisperer. But today we're going to be talking with the woman behind it, Tanya Pushkin. Tanya, welcome to the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast.
Thank you, Nina. I'm very glad to be here with you.
I'm really honored to have you on here. I mean, we
Oh,
have seen you. You've had such great success, and we've seen you with interviews and features and big names and publications like Bitch's Bride, Martha Stewart's Weddings, and more. We know where you are now, but I'm wondering if we can get a bit of your origin story. How did you get here?
it's such a good question and complicated, but not. I started out as an actress. I had a wonderful career for about 10 years. Then I joined the corporate world. I was running public relations and corporate philanthropy for different fashion and beauty brands. And then 5 years ago, I got remarried, and it was at my wedding that was covered by the New York Times, one of those really big vow uh, articles on Sundays. And the writer was at the wedding, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, I've covered hundreds of ceremonies for the New York Times, and I've never seen such a beautiful ceremony. Meanwhile, I had no idea what I was doing. I was not in this world. I was still in my corporate life. And I had written the ceremony and we'd written our vows, but truly had no idea what we were doing. And it was sort of I- about a month later, after talking to a few people who were at the wedding, I went for this big time. And I started this business without a business plan, without a strategy, just a crazy idea. I don't recommend anybody does this because it's really not business savvy, but it's what I did. And I've never looked back. It's been, I guess, about 4.5 years now that I've had this business. And it's a drastic change from what I was doing before, but it's a little bit full circle back to my acting days. because when I'm coaching on the vows, when I'm coaching clients on how to deliver their vows, or if I'm coaching, which is a huge part of my business, a family member or a friend who's officiating, if I'm coaching them on public speaking, on how to run a ceremony like a professional, all of that, I'm basically coaching or imparting my acting skills. So it's kind of full circle. And then when I officiate, it's like a performance. So it's really going back to my roots in many, many ways. And I absolutely love this. It's a far cry from what I was doing before, but it's almost a calling, as corny as that sounds.
I think it, because when you mention, and my jaw dropped when you mentioned between 4 to 5 years, you would never, you would think you were doing this forever, from your website, from your services, from what you do and how well you do it. And it's passion and calling has to be a big part of it. What else would you credit to the success you've had in a relatively short time of 4 to 5 years?
And the first 2 years were pandemic years.
Wow.
I know, kind of crazy. Um, an unbelievable amount of determination and hustle, relentless, to the point where I think it was affecting my marriage, how driven I was to, I don't know if it's to make it work, but to get into the industry because I knew nothing about this industry. This is, a completely new environment, a new everything. And I was just determined to hustle. And I hit a lot of walls. And it wasn't as if I have to make this business work. It was testing myself, like, how can I really pull this off? So, calling, passion, I don't know what you want to call it, but I really do very much appreciate you telling me that, I'm successful because if you were to ask my husband, he would say, "Oh, you've just started.
Yeah, yeah.
Got a long way to go."
Well, you credit the determination, and that can be something that a lot of wedding professionals, well, they certainly need it, but can struggle with, especially right now. What I see from a lot of wedding professionals I work with is the 2025 books aren't looking like the 2023, 2024. What advice would you have for them?
So I will say that my 2024 is not looking at all like my 2023.
Hmm.
I'm seeing such a huge difference. Um, whether it's couples are not willing to put the same budgets as they were before, they're taking longer to make decisions. It's not looking now. 2025 is looking a little bit better, but 2024 is a very strange year.
How do you stay focused and not get down and out during those different years?
Wow.
Yeah.
You just keep plugging away and know that, your revenue is just not going to be the same. And it's interesting because, we all try to raise our prices every year,
Mhm.
and that's okay. It's just there are not as many weddings as, at least I'm seeing, not as many as there were last year.
Yeah, and I think that's what people are experiencing kind of across the board, and being able to just kind of accept it and to keep going and to move forward and to focus on the next season, the next year, and not let it, you know, take you, because I think many wedding industry professionals are also passion focused, and it's a calling, and it's their world.
Right, right. It is their world. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting world where, yeah, it's a, and I've been part of different worlds in my life. And this is very unique. And yes, I think a very determined group of people.
How has your background in acting and with PR helped you through the sales process?
Haha, the sales process. Uh, I think my acting, I'm very comfortable speaking with people. It's very easy for me to make a connection with people. And I think that probably comes from acting. It's not that I'm putting on a show or pretending to be somebody else, but it's the ease that I have with people that probably comes from both the acting and public relations world that enables me to make a connection with a couple when we first meet. And then it's very much based on chemistry, I think. I think couples book me because of the connection that we have. And there are times when I have no connection.
Hmm.
And I don't necessarily book those people. We just don't, you know,
Don't
don't
click.
what.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you find there's been a difference? Well, you started your business during COVID, and that's when the first full-time years of my business was too. So I
Really?
pivoted from doing meetings. I mean, in the beginning, when I still had a full-time job, I would take calls in my car at the end of the work shift on the cell phone. Now they're all on Zoom, where they used to be either in person or phone. Has the way calls go now with more Zoom meetings, does that make the connection easier? Does it make it more challenging?
So because I started really at the onset of COVID, the few months prior, I would meet my couples in person. So now, I mean, you're saving up a lot of time doing it all on Zoom. I average anywhere from 5 to 8 or 9 Zooms a day, and that's everything from a discovery call, meeting a client, to a practice session, to coaching an officiant. I mean, there's so many. And if Zoom didn't exist, I don't know what I would do. Also, my business is global. So this Zoom thing is just genius. It's like, what did we do before this, you know?
Right? I almost can't believe it that it's like, why were we going on the phone instead of Zoom? But I was. That's what we were doing. I mean, for me, it worked because no one had to know I was in my old Mustang at the time
Right,
taking calls. But
right, exactly. Yeah, I guess, yeah, the phone calls, but with me, it was meeting people in person, meeting for a drink or, whatever, and then practicing with them, going to their apartments, meeting in the park, all of that. I mean, it's so time consuming.
yeah, yeah, you would have to book out a
Yep,
full evening for it as opposed to an hour slot.
right.
Yeah, and that's a very steady flow of calls a day. How do you feel you're able to, for me, if I have more than like three calls in a day, my introvert starts to just like panic. How do you handle the volume?
I don't know how to answer that. I just go. I just go, 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 go. It's exhausting. It can be
Yeah.
exhausting because you're on all the time. You're just on and on and on. And, with every couple or every person or whatever, it's a new situation for them. I might be the only Zoom of the day, so I don't know. You do it.
You just do it. I think that's feeling a bit like a theme for you and your business is you just take the next 10 steps and you just do it. Part of your business as being a wedding officiant or a vow writer, it relies on you really getting to know the couple in order to provide your service. How do you feel other wedding vendors can benefit from knowing their couples on a deeper level like you do?
Well, I would say it's not necessary for them
Hmm.
to get to know the couples the way I do. They don't really need to. I do it because we have to. I mean, if we're working on vows or if I'm creating a ceremony for them, I mean, with a ceremony, it's a little less in depth, but with vows, it's a very intimate relationship that we have. I know so much about each person. And the good and the bad, the ugly, the evil, whatever it is, it all comes out in the work that we do. But I don't necessarily think it's necessary for another vendor to go as deeply as I do. I think I think wedding planners do get to know their couples pretty well, and they're also quasi therapists, just like I am. A photographer, that's an, those 9 or 10 hours that they spend on the wedding day, that's also a very intimate relationship. Do they get to know them as well as I do? No, but again, not needed.
Hmm.
Really not needed. Yeah.
You know who I was thinking may get to know the couples almost as well is a dance instructor. If
Oh,
because you're vulnerable, learning the dance and you're seeing how they deal with maybe imperfection, maybe
yep.
stress. So, and that's very intimate as well. So that I was just thinking now.
Good point. Really good point. Yeah. Yeah,
part
absolutely.
part of why I was so shocked, that you are relatively new to the business is your website. You do such a masterful job of articulating the importance of your service. So how were you able to carve this niche of not just the vows but wedding ceremony planning as a whole?
Kind of made that up. It was when I started 4.5 years ago, nobody was addressing vows. No one. And now I have a healthy amount of competition, but there's a big difference between what I do and a vow writer. A vow writer will interview the person. A week later, you get a full set of vows. Boom, boom, you're done. My method is quite different in that I use the person's words, 100% of their words to craft their vows. So they've answered a very in-depth questionnaire with me, or I've interviewed them, however it comes out. But then I craft their vows using their words completely. So it's absolutely 1,000% as authentic as you can get. Now that's the launching pad because I've crafted their vows a beginning, middle, and end, a flow, a structure, but then we collaborate and we edit together. And I'm basically their best friend, their vow coach from beginning to end. I'm holding their hand through the whole process. And together we create this. So I'm not working on my own, I'm working with them. And until, the set of vows is ready, it's final. And then we go into phase two, which is the delivery. And that part, I don't thankfully yet really have a lot of competition because that's the actress in me. I'm coaching you on how to say these vows because you can write the most fabulous words in the world, but if you don't know how to say them, if you are really boring and one tone, monotone, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what you've written because people have pieced out. They're not listening to you. It's just too boring. So the delivery to me is almost more important than the words you've written. And I catch everything on Zoom from the body language to mumbling to not being able to project your voice to not making eye contact and just, being glued to your vow book or piece of paper. All of that is so important. So, eh, you know, we work on expression. How do you sound as expressive as possible? Because then you're able to not only draw in your future spouse completely into what you're saying, but all the guests, you want them in the palm of your hand. And all of that comes through the delivery of your vows.
There's so much to unpack with what you said through all that. I really love it. First, what I'm seeing is, and what I think others can take away is you have taken your past experience, to make yourself more of an expert in what you're doing now and to further carve that niche. Secondly, by I think of my husband, right? And he's not an actor, he's not lyrical. You know, if you ask him what he thought about me, he'd say I'm nice, I'm funny. But by you pulling words he has said or a partner has said, they're gonna be probably more comfortable delivering it and speaking it and then working with you on that coaching when it comes time to present the vows. They can really be in the moment and they can be focused on them and their partner because they've already gone gone through it, you know, and have worked out the nerves and have maybe even memorized it.
Ooh, that's something that I always tell people not to do.
Okay.
Yeah, don't memorize because that's too much pressure. Familiarize yourself with the words as much as possible so that you can really look up and make that eye contact as much as possible. But memorizing, mm,
Not the goal.
not the goal, no. I mean, to look down at your vow book once in a while, sure, because you're so familiar, but just to do it like that off book, as an actor will say, no, I strongly recommend not to do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Everything you've described here is a service that couples may not even realize exist. And there are other vendors who have things that, then that's a big part of what I do with marketing and social media is letting people know these things exist. How would you recommend to wedding professionals selling a service that couples may say, well, one, they don't know it exists, so two, they don't know they need it? Because
right.
now that I've heard it, I'm like, you need this. But how do you get them to realize that?
Well, that's a thing, it's education. And that's why my goal is always to meet as many, especially planners, because a couple has no idea that this exists unless they're listening to a podcast or they've read a piece of, an article in the press or whatever. I really rely on especially planners and then often photographers to say, hey, have you thought about your ceremony? That's all they need to say. Have you thought about your ceremony? And very often the ceremony is the last thing they think about. And it's very often overlooked. And very often, oh no, what are we going to do? So I really rely on planners to ask a couple when they first get booked. Yeah, sure, the venue, that's really important. So's the caterer, so's your dress, so's everything else. But who's going to marry you? And have you thought about writing your own vows? And very often a couple has no clue that there is help. I mean, they know that, if it's not clergy or if it's not, it very often it's a family member or a friend who's going to marry them, but they don't know that there is help for them in this poor person. They've asked, would you officiate our wedding? This person has no idea what's ahead of them. They have no idea. They have to Google, how do I write a wedding ceremony? That is huge. That's overwhelming. That's like, oh my God, where do I start? And I'm here to take that off their plates entirely. They don't have to worry about writing a ceremony. The only part that that person has to worry about, or not even worry about, work on, is that 3 to 4 minute speech. Hi, I'm Uncle Johnny, or I'm best friend Sally. I'm standing up here because blah 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 because blah, blah, all of that. And then the rest they don't have to worry about. I have crafted the ceremony with the couple, and what that's an important piece to note. It's the same as if I'm officiating. I work with the couple to get exactly what they want. Everything from how to welcome people to the end, how to pronounce you husband and wife, and absolutely everything in between. That couple is in complete control of their ceremony. So it's the same whether I'm marrying them or coaching a family member or a friend, they know what that ceremony is going to entail. And that is an important part.
It is, and I think every wedding professional listening should take note that when you hear that somebody is asking a loved one to perform the ceremony, that a service like this exists. Because I'll just say personally, I haven't seen a ceremony from performed by a friend that people could hear. Let's just say they can't even hear it, and you miss out. And like you said, the poor friend or family member who's asked doesn't know what they're in for. But I don't think the couple realizes either how
Right.
much goes into it. So knowing this exists.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that, by the time I'm finished practicing the ceremony with them, these people could get hired as officiants. They are ready to go, and we've worked, and yeah, it makes a huge difference. And very often a couple will choose a family member or a friend because they feel like it's more personalized, but they're sacrificing a lot by
Hmm.
doing that. And I know when I officiate, I always tell the couple, by the time I show up at your wedding, I'm not a stranger. We have worked together. I'm more of a friend at that point. You've gotten to know me. And so it's as personalized as if it's a family member or a friend.
Yeah, I have to admit that when I started attending more weddings and seeing people who hired officiants, I was married in a church, and it made me really wish I had that because they're so
Mm.
personal and such a what a I can't think of a more perfect way to start such an intimate ceremony, such as getting married, with somebody bringing up the best things about the two of you as individuals and together.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that you've been able to use people outsourcing, so to speak, wedding day tasks to family as a positive. It's something a lot of wedding professionals I work with kind of get stressed about, whether I'm working with people who do wedding cakes or centerpieces, even photography. They say, well, people are, trying to hire people they know or want their
Right.
hands cake, but there's a lot of sometimes risks that go along with that. How can wedding vendors approach couples or sell to couples who think their service can be outsourced that way?
What else are they outsourcing? Are you going to tell me the aunt is going to bake the cake?
That's, what,
Really?
yeah, we're stuff, I was talking with a wedding baker, she does cakes, and people think that they can bring in outside cakes. And she said she was doing a drop off and saw somebody's, aunt setting up a cake and putting flowers in it that they just had gotten from the grocery store. So she was dying because she knows that you can't put that on food, and it
Oh,
becomes a roadblock where they go, well, I'm getting less bookings because people, want to do something more DIY, more handmade.
okay. So, yeah, DIY. The antithesis of this, I will describe my son's wedding last summer. It was all DIY, all of it. And it I was like, I don't know what this is going to be like, but I stayed. I didn't
Hmm.
impose anything. And I have to tell you, it was truly one of the most beautiful, beautiful weddings I've ever been to. And they DIY'd because I mean, all of our families, we were doing the flowers at 7 o'clock in the morning. We were setting tables. We were building the chuppah. I mean, it was the last thing I ever thought would happen. And it's interesting because shortly afterwards, I did a story on Instagram about not seeking perfection anymore
Hmm.
because couples are obsessed with perfection. And I had just come from my son's wedding, which was the last thing from perfect, but it was so extraordinary. So here I go, here's the DIY that we're all saying, no, no, no. But in this case, it was extraordinary. But Yeah, what do you do if the aunt wants to bake the cake? Or I just did a wedding recently, and the photographer, I introduced myself to the photographer I was officiating. I said, "Oh, are you from New York?" She said, "No, I'm a friend of the couple from Boston." I went, "Oh, you're not a professional?"
Yeah.
She had never done a wedding before, but I could see after a few minutes she knew what she was doing.
Hmm.
She had never done a She'd never photographed a wedding, but she looked like she was doing a great job. So you never know, you know?
Yeah, I think because as I was talking with, my colleague about it who does the cakes, I was saying, well, they're not your service, right? You want somebody who values your service.
Hmm.
Somebody who values the storytelling of ceremonies, for you would be important. Somebody who values sweets, having a cake that's themed to your wedding, that's what you're looking for. So just keep, I kind of love the law of attraction where it's like you make your wish list of like your dream client and that's what you attract. Put those things on it that you want to attract somebody who values the service you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, is your coaching, is it for just people who are going to be officiating a wedding or is it for professional officiants as well?
I've never coached a professional officiant, no. And a lot of them I know personally, and I'm sure that they're wonderful at what they do. So no, I've never, I mean, I've coached outside of the wedding industry. I do a lot of my clients actually that I have coached for vows or to officiate come back. I have a presentation. Would you help me? Or, so public speaking in general, but and I used to do that a lot as in public relations. I would do media training or coaching for presentations. So that's just something that I've done, but I've never coached a professional officiant. No.
I do have a lot of fellow wedding service providers, and we're always working on our speaking and speaking engagements. So, should I tell them if they're looking to nail a presentation, they should reach
Or
out to you?
absolutely. I did help actually one wedding speaker for Engage. I
Fantastic.
did help them on their presentation. And I am happy to do more of that. I just have never put it out there.
Yeah, I'm just now because I'm really like also low key asking for myself. I'm like, all right, this is gonna be
Oh,
good. So,
yeah.
if people do want to find you to refer to their couples or follow you and work with you, where can they find you?
Instagram is the Vow Whisperer. The website is thevowwhisperer.com. Uh, Tanya at thevowwhisperer.com to get really specific. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'll have everything in our show notes. But before we go, I have our bonus round of some quick questions to see how you answer. The first thing I want to ask is fill in the blank. The best weddings have
Heart, soul,
beautiful.
uh, yeah, as much
Cocktail
as
hour or dessert hour?
cocktail hour.
The last book you read.
I just reread The Unbearable Lightness of Being.
Ooh,
Did you ever? And the movie is
I
amazing.
haven't read it. I've heard about it.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful book. I mean, it came out gazillions of years ago, and the movie came out. The movie stars Daniel Day-Lewis. It's a beautiful film and a beautiful book, but I don't read enough anymore.
Mhm. I'm a big reader. There's a new thing called silent book clubs where you go you sign up, you meet with a group of people at like a bar or lounge, and you read silently for an hour. And then after the hour, if you want to mingle, you can. And I was like, what a great way for like introverts
Ah.
to get out and get to meet people because you don't necessarily have to talk. You can leave after that hour. But
Oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
yeah, Silent Book Club on Instagram, and then they have different chapters. So I just found out about that.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
And then when you are in the zone, you are listening to
Mozart.
Mozart. I have one more question I want to add because you're an actress. Do you have a favorite or go-to monologue?
It's Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
I was I went to Juilliard, which I was trained as a Shakespearean actress. So that's my, and in my own wedding vows, actually, I did do a Shakespearean sonnet.
Well, now we know your wedding vows has the accolade of being among the best ceremonies ever as per the New York Times.
Right. She didn't write that. She just said it.
Yes, but we know. We know she said
Yeah.
it. Well, that is fantastic. I'm going to have all of your links in the show notes so everybody can follow you and make sure to refer you when they hear somebody is looking to have a special ceremony filled with heart. Thank you for being here, Tanya.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much.